Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting of the State Street Advisory Committee, December 14th, 2022. Been very active lately. I will start this meeting today with a roll call of the members. Madam Clerk, Timmy, could I have a roll call, please? Here.
Here. Here.
Black. Absent. Hillary Blackerby.
She's absent.
Absent. Roxanne Bonderson. Roxana Bonderson.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we sure can. Thank you, Roxana.
Thank you.
Marge Caffarelli. Not present. Roger Durling. Not present. Nadra Ehrman. Here. Robin Elander. Here. Alejandro Gutierrez. Not present. Megan Harmon. Not present. Mike Jordan. Ed Lundvik. Peter Lewis.
Here.
Kristen Miller. Here. Suzanne Tejada. Not present.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have a quorum. Ms. Harris, Tess Harris, could you give us some housekeeping remarks before we get going relative to speaking into the mic, restrooms, et cetera?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Davis. Looks like we have a good amount of mics for the members in the room, but if you could just make sure to share the mic next to you. If somebody doesn't have a microphone, you also push it to turn it on and push it to turn it off before and after you speak, so don't forget that. And then restrooms are just out the doors to the right-hand side. And I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Davis.
Great, thank you very much. It takes us to item 2, opening remarks and announcements. So as you all know, we've been very busy in the last couple of weeks, and we've had the survey out, and we've had open house for a couple of days, and 2 days of community design workshops. And personally, I've been very impressed, both with the involvement of the community, the participation levels in both the survey as well as the workshops, and the activities here of basically our staff and our committee. Up front, I really want to thank Tess and her crew, because I know that those spaces that we went into before you saw them in operation took a lot of work to get them prepped. So please express our thanks to everybody that worked on that to make that happen. That was beyond the call of duty when I came in and saw how much work had to be done in that regard, so thank you. I'd also like to thank SSAC council members Mike Jordan and Megan Harmon for showing up and participating as they did in the workshops. Also council members Kristen Snedden, Oscar Gutierrez, and Eric Friedman, who came by. So again, great participation by the council. Big shout out to the SSAC members who helped facilitate in the workshops: Ken Saxon, Peter Lewis, Mike Becker, Suzanne Tejada, Nadra Ehrman. And if I missed anybody, special shout out to Robin Elander. Robin was there all 3 days. She got 2 of the toughest groups to work with also, as well as basically helping get the artistic work and the entertainment into the thing. So Robin, thank you. I'm going to give a round of applause. It's been a great start. Great start. Now the hard work begins. Today we're going to have a number of presentations. I'll go over that in terms of the agenda review that covers what we've come from, where we've come from, what we've learned, and hopefully point us in a direction. But before I do that, I'm going to ask Brian Bossy, who is the Public Works Manager dealing with the State Street interim operations, to come give a little 5-minute update as to what's going on. Brian.
Good afternoon, Chair Davis and members of the SSAC. I think it was 3 minutes, Dave, but we'll work with that. I wanted to come in, thank you for the invite. We'll be doing this on a regular basis, updating you on the interim operations, because obviously the two are tied together, the interim operations and your long-term vision. So I've got a couple of key points to review with you of what's been going on regarding interim operations. The first is a proposed charge for use of the right-of-way on State Street. Back in September 20th, we came before council with a number of items for decisions. One of the items that came up was a charge for the use of right-of-way on State Street, and there was some discussion, lively discussion. At that point, council directed us to go to Finance Committee and take up the conversation with them, which we did last week on December 6th. And all three Finance Committee members had very different yet very valid opinions on what that charge should be, and so they subsequently directed us back to council, where we'll discuss that more on January 10th. So that is still in the works. Next are our design requirements. Again, this is broken into two components, and again, this goes back to September 20th before council. The first is a stormwater requirement that was due for all the outdoor business facilities on December the 1st. And so that is basically to clear a clean line of travel for water going down State Street, stormwater. We have been actively enforcing that and working with the various business to get them to comply. The second part of that are more the bigger design requirements, which are folks need to be in compliance by February 1st of 2023. And we held a webinar workshop on November the 9th, and we did tape it just to go over those various design requirements so people know exactly what we're talking about. And so again, we taped it, and we have sent that video link out to all the businesses with outdoor facilities. Next are bikes and peds on State Street, bikes and pedestrians. We are working with the city's traffic engineer on a number of pilot programs, testing things out on a couple of different blocks on State Street. Before that can happen, we need to scrape off the remnant old bike lanes and traffic lanes that are out there now. We anticipate that happening sometime in January. And then following that, we'll get into a pilot program for separating bikes and pedestrians more efficiently, and that will hopefully inform your work here as well as MIG's work.
Here we have one to take a minute.
Next, our ADA compliance on State Street. After many months of working with businesses, we had nearly full compliance with ADA requirements. We only had one business that did not comply, and subsequently they removed their facility from the street. So I believe approximately 49 of the 50 businesses out there complied, which is great. And then lastly, we had our quarterly deep cleaning of the actual street. That took place November 14th, 15th, and 16th, and again, that'll be on a quarterly basis going forward. So that's kind of big picture, what's going on with the interim operations on State Street, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes?
Go ahead, Ken.
I have two questions. One is, can you be more specific about what you are looking to test in terms of bicycles and pedestrians?
I'd be happy to, Chair Davis, co-chair, or Mr. Saxon. So we are looking, as you recall, back in, I think it was early November, late October, some of the green lanes that were out there on a number of different blocks were removed. They just weren't separating pedestrians and cyclists the way we had wanted to. So we're looking at different options as to how to do that more effectively, especially going forward with a more formal design as you folks move forward. That will hopefully help you out in your design. So we're working with the traffic engineer. We'd like to test things out on some of the more quiet blocks to see how that works, but then also on some of the more busy blocks where there are a lot of outdoor business facilities, and see how we can better separate a bike lane and pedestrians, and just to make people feel safer on State Street.
So that's coming from the work of one of your traffic engineers? Is that planning?
The city's traffic engineer, as well as city staff and our transportation planning staff. And we'll also be consulting with some of our bike advocacy groups out there.
Great, thank you. And the second is about stormwater. So it's not theoretical this year. We've had 3 storms in the last month. So what have we learned about the parklets and stormwater in the last month?
Chair Davis, Committee Member Saxon, that's a great question. We've learned a lot. One is this requirement is a must. We need to have the gutters clear and free so that water can travel down State Street. It's one of our main runoff areas for stormwater. And through the last couple of storms, we have noticed, obviously, as one would think, that where folks were in compliance with the stormwater requirements, the water went right through. Those who hadn't gotten there yet, we did have some backup and some flooding that came up onto the sidewalk into the planters, pushed dirt and debris throughout the area. So it's very important that people comply with that. And we continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nadra?
I have two questions. One regarding the stormwater requirements. Do you have any requirements regarding any kind of toxic chemicals or materials and limiting those within the stormwater requirements that you have currently? Does that?
Chair Davis, I'm not sure I understand your question.
So in
We're not
terms-
if you're asking, we
Yeah.
are not
As part
actively
of the regulation
monitoring
or the
what's
requirements
going down
for-
State Street.
So you're not monitoring that right now in terms of the stormwater requirements?
The downtown team isn't. So the stormwater requirement may be kind of a misnomer. What we're asking folks to do with their outdoor business facilities is whether they have a platform or otherwise, they need to keep that gutter, essentially the gutter apron, as well as the height of the curb clear and free so stormwater can go down. As far as testing and things like that, that's not something that
what
the
you guys are
downtown
gonna
team-
work
yeah.
on. Okay, so that's not part of the requirement, and it's just in regards to the parklets and the space that is covering the stormwater access.
Correct.
Perfect. The other question that I had regarded downtown ambassadors, I know you didn't speak to that, but could you just provide a quick update on how that process is going? If there are any information that the ambassadors are finding with their work right now in terms of downtown that you can speak to?
Chair Davis, Committee Member Ehrman. Our downtown ambassador program, we have 6 currently on staff. Ideally, we would be at approximately 18. So we are having significant staff resource issues. It's been that way for about a year now. We continue to seek out new candidates to be involved in the program. I believe we have 2 currently going through the process, but like everybody else, those human resources are hard to come by. So we're struggling from that end, just having enough people out there. But when they are out there, we find that they're very effective in disseminating information to people experiencing unsheltered folks, as well as just giving simple directions and things like that. We also have posted one of them up at City Hall to help people move in and out of City Hall, accordingly based on where they need to go. So it's a work in progress. We obviously wish we had the full 18 on staff, and it's something we're struggling to get fully staffed. So if you know anybody, please send them our way. We are looking at increasing their rate of pay as well to help bolster that program.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Posse. We'll see you next time, if not before. That takes us to agenda review. And again, on our agenda here, we will be, in the first item, looking at the emerging community feedback, existing conditions analysis. And I'd ask the consultants when they do this, that they basically focus on the major takeaways and what would be informing our next phase in that regard, not get lost in the details. We all did get the PowerPoint, thank you for that. A lot of detail in there, which we will absorb over time. The other item basically is a public outreach, reporting on public outreach events and the discussion about the future design for State Street with a mini workshop for us at SSAC. The third item is the discussion approval of the SSAC meeting schedule. Now, we're going to probably lose a quorum halfway through this meeting, and that's at the end. And it's pretty important that at least Tess has that there. If there is no objection, I'd like to move that up after the minutes and deal with that at the beginning of the meeting while we have a quorum. Any objection? If not, by consensus, we will do that. That then takes us to the approval of the minutes, the meeting of October 27th, 2022. Any questions or comments on the minutes as drafted? Not seeing any. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I can make a motion, Chair. Davis.
Roxana has made the motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Kristen Miller. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chair. Roxana Bonderson,
Yes.
Nadra Erman,
Yes.
Robin Elander,
Yes.
Mike Jordan. Ed Lundvik. Peter Lewis,
Yes.
Kristen Miller. Yes. Chair Davis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Saxon.
Yes.
A motion passes unanimously with the members present. That would then, with taking the item out of order, then item C is the discussion and approval of the revised 2023 State Street Advisory Committee meeting schedule. Ms. Harris, Tess?
Chair Davis, let's open it up for general public comment prior to going to the.
No, I was going to go ahead and do that item and then do general public
Okay.
comment. I'm handling that right after the
Okay.
minutes is an action item.
Okay, great. Give us one moment. As we get the slides up, I'll kick it off. So in short, I sent out a quick survey to the State Street Advisory Committee members. For every month that we do plan to have a meeting, there was a pretty solid majority for the date that was chosen. So the meetings will, unless there is objection to this schedule, the meetings will be held primarily on Mondays and on Thursdays in February and in June. We're working out locations for a few of the meetings, likely either in this room or at the MTD auditorium. Our next meeting, though, would be scheduled for February 16th at the MTD auditorium where we've met previously as well. That's all I wanted to raise. If anybody has any comments or issues with these dates that you would like to raise at this time, please let me know. I know that it doesn't accommodate everybody. There really isn't a perfect day that's going to work for all of you. So this is my best in trying to make sure that every member will be able to attend at least some of the meetings over the next year.
Any
Ms.
comments
Harris?
to Tess at this point?
Yes, I have a question, Ms. Harris, if you allow me. Is Ms. Ostringer in the room?
Committee Member Bonderson, she is not available
Got it.
at the moment. Is
Can I
it?
just ask you directly, on the Thursdays, I believe you said there was 2 Thursdays, but I didn't catch both. One was in February. On those 2 Thursdays, will Ms. Ostringer be present, or because the two of us have Planning Commission scheduled on that day, how should we proceed? Should we just be expected, both of us would not be there?
So I did speak with Ms. Ostringer prior to this meeting. If she's not able to attend because of Planning Commission, there'll be another representative from the City Attorney's Office at this meeting. Again,
Got it.
it's those two dates I think were pretty high for the rest of the committee, and so I would like to move forward with those.
Absolutely. I just wanted to know the feedback because I had not received a feedback from her directly, but I appreciate the information and I may just need to miss it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for the question. Madam Clerk, Greta, are there anybody who wishes to speak under public comment on this item?
I do not
Just-
see any raised hands in person, and there are no raised hands online. If you do want to make a public comment and you're joining remotely, just click the hand icon, and seeing none.
Okay, great. We're looking for a motion to approve the proposed committee meeting schedule as submitted by staff. Okay, a motion by Ed.
I just wanted to note that the 4/17, just looking at my calendar, it looks like Easter Sunday. I don't know if that should be 4/18.
Check that before we approve.
Let me double check. April 17th looks like a Monday in 2023. Good. And just as a quick clarification, the June 22nd date, I know the Planning Commission comment was there, that's the 4th Thursday, so there wouldn't be a standard Planning Commission meeting that day.
If
What do you think,
that
Michael?
sounds great.
I think, I'm sorry, I may have been on the wrong year. I'm just trying to put these in real quick, but my apologies.
I'm always on the wrong.
And I will make sure to send out the final dates to the committee this week, so you all have it in your calendars.
We're gonna take an action right now.
I'll second the motion.
Who seconded?
I did.
Oh, Ken did? Okay, so I have Ed and Ken as first and seconder. Roll call vote.
Roxana Bonderson,
Yes.
Nadra Erman,
Yes.
Robin Elander,
Yes.
Mike Jordan, Ed Lenvig, Peter Lewis,
Yes.
Kristen Miller,
Yes.
Suzanne Tejada,
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Chair Davis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Saxon.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously by those present. It takes us to item D, 2D. This is general public comment. This is public comment for items within the purview of the SSAC, but not on today's agenda. So I'd ask if anybody in the room needs to make public comment, again, something within our purview, not on the agenda, please come to the dais. If not, we'll look to see if anyone's online. Greta?
I do not see any raised hands for this item. We do have a raised hand for item number 1 when we get to it.
Okay.
No raised hands online. If you are participating online and want to make a public comment, please click the hand icon in your panel. I'm seeing none. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. That then moves us into item 3A, emerging community feedback and existing conditions analysis. Who's up? Mr. Isofano.
State Street Advisory Committee, so we will have MIG kick us off, and then I'll do a short, I'll talk about some of the community engagement aspects, and then they will follow up. So you'll get a team of people for this first item.
Very good. Thank you, Tess. Thank you, Chair Davis and the group. We are pleased to be here to present and mostly discuss the future of State Street. And so we're going to move very quickly through this opening part. I did want to introduce a new member of our team for State Street, MIG Director of Urban Design in one of our Denver offices, Matt Schauwerker, who's worked on the famous 16th Street Mall in Denver, Brighton Boulevard, Austin, Texas, Washington State, a lot of different places. So he's going to augment our team. We needed more horsepower to drive this project forward in light of the rigorous nature of this process. So Matt, welcome to the project. So with that, moving forward with the existing conditions, I'm going to turn it back to Tess. Let's go.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm going to move us quickly through the existing condition, or through the community engagement, but I just wanted to take a minute and pause because as I walked in today, I realized that we actually haven't met as a committee since prior to our November open house events that we had on 1230 A State Street. So I wanted to run through those as well as the events that we had this past week really quickly in case you weren't able to attend one or both of those events. And then staff and the MIG team have been working really diligently on different outreach efforts both along State Street and in the community at large. We've done a lot of, I'm going to start with the survey. We've done a lot of work on the survey. It is out right now. We initially were planning to close it tomorrow. We are going to extend it through the end of this year, so it'll close on December 31st. That number, as of today, actually, that number has increased, so we're at about 5,700 responses so far. Really hoping we get to 6,000 by the end of the year, so help me with that. And happy to have it both in English and Spanish, and trying to get participation throughout the community in both English and Spanish. We've had a lot of different in-person events. We've been had the open house events on State Street. We've done events, the MIG team as well as city staff have done events out in the community at schools, at grocery stores, and churches. And we're estimating we've had over 1,000 people in person that have attended one of our events. This is some of the outreach efforts. So we are partnering, the community development team is partnering with the library on these Library on the Go events on State Street. The next one is coming up this Friday from 3:30 to 5. I hope you'll join us. We'll be on the 700 block of State Street. The library will be out there. We'll also be doing holiday card making and stamping, and it should be a really fun, family-friendly event. We've been participating at the downtown organization block parties that have been held monthly, and happy to be able to have a table out there and talk to people as they come to those events. We've been at the farmers market, both on the Tuesday farmers market and the Saturday farmers market, talking to vendors, talking to people that are coming in, and then having signs and other survey material out there. We've also reached out to a variety of schools. All of the Santa Barbara Unified School District schools have received notification from me, and I have gone out primarily actually to junior high, both 5th, 6th, and junior high school students. The latest one was this afternoon, right before this meeting. You can see in the back some of the ideas as you exit today. There's an idea board back there that has some of the students' ideas from this afternoon. It was a great event. We also attended the Neighborhood Navigation Center event to talk with some of the homeless community on what they would like to see in the downtown and what challenges and opportunities might exist there for them. We've been at different parks. We've been up in La Cumbre Plaza as well, had a lot of different one-on-one meetings with stakeholders. And then we've attended a number of other committee and commission meetings within the city to try to spread the word on the survey and get different feedback and input. The next meeting that we will have is tomorrow morning at 7:30. It's a joint meeting with the Downtown Parking Committee and Transportation Circulation Committee meeting in City Hall. These are just some photos of the event that we had November 3rd and 4th at 1230 State Street, trying to get input on the survey that was put out right at the beginning of November. So held different events, different times of the day on Friday, and then as well on Saturday. About 500 people attended those. Again, some photos of that event, and then the one on the right is from Harding Elementary School. MIG staff was there to talk to families. And then these are some photos of the design workshops that we had this past week at 821 State Street. Held a number of different events throughout both the Friday and Saturday. Workshops on Friday with the design professional community in the morning, and then the general public in the early evening, and then Saturday. Everything was open to the general public. We had an event with the Arts Fund, so they showcased some of their artwork. We also had free childcare provided by the city to anybody that was interested. And just some excellent conversations. And so this is what we'll be doing later on during this meeting as well, is getting this group to engage in this type of workshop activity and make sure that all of your voices are at the table. I'm going to turn it now over to McCool, who will keep moving our presentation forward. And
Thanks,
then just
Tess.
real quick, before we move on, we are going to have another agenda item right before we jump into the breakout groups on the workshop, where we will want to hear from all of you as to what you heard at the different outreach events. So if you could save those comments for that next agenda item, that would be great.
Thanks, Tess. And in addition, we are also doing Spanish-only speaking workshops. We've done it in Our Lady of the Guadalupe Parish, Foodland, and other places. And there is going to be a Spanish-only speaking design workshop this Sunday from 10 to 2 p.m. With that, as you all know, we have also been working with different commissions, committees, and also, of course, council members, as well as different stakeholders. We have started to clearly hear from the community in terms of their overall vision. You can see all the data that has been shared with you earlier. Safety is one of the key criteria. And people have talked about different reasons for coming to State Street, including eating and drinking, and they come uniformly all through the week, which is great for us. To talk about the overall character and other amenities, Matt.
So I will, as Chairman Davis said, we have a lot of data we've amassed. I'm going to move through this very quickly, and if you have questions, please bring them up at the end. I think one reason certainly people come down to downtown is the historic character. Is an incredible set array of historic buildings in the district in downtown. Also, the block structure is very pedestrian friendly. The paseos are an incredible asset. The ability to move from State Street to through those small human scale spaces is amazing. How do people get here and move around? Obviously, you can see mostly they walk. A lot of people drive as well, and bike and scooter, which is supported by, speaking of a lot of detail, a very comprehensive transportation network. And we can get into the nuances of that and how it supports State Street. But our Farron Piers, our transportation consultant, working with Tess and Timmy, have started to really get data about bike and pedestrian movements. So I'll just say here, we can get into there's a lot of detail we can get into there. In general, as we start talking about the design and planning for bikes, we want to sort of really focus on that 60%. A great way of thinking about it I always go to is, do you feel comfortable biking down the street with your child? That's the kind of bike facility that will bring that 60% and people to downtown and really use bikes. Safety, we know that's a concern. And for vehicles, before the closure and after, we know through the research it's become safer. There's fewer collisions after the closure of State Street. But we do know bikes and pedestrians are still an area of conflict along the street, and that's a conversation that is ongoing. Pedestrian counts, like I said, amassing an amount of data on that we can dig into with Farron Piers, and as well as transit service. I think you all well know the transit center at Figueroa, most of the lines come in there. There's a high density of bus service to the area. And I'll hand it back to McCool for.
So as the community has been talking about what kind of different ideas they have for if they are walking or biking or taking transit or driving, you can begin to see different initial emerging ideas that are rising to the top. Clearly pedestrian only, dedicated paths for bicyclists. There's a huge desire for closing it to cars. So there are some of these key things rising to the top. In terms of parking data, you saw a lot of the slides. The key thing to keep in mind that there are certain large underutilized lots like 6, 8, and 10, which are on the east side of a corridor. But generally, there is enough parking availability all across different lots all over the project area. We have in the previous sessions talked about temporality, how the character of buildings influences adjoining uses. And during the evenings, it does get tough. Keeping that in mind, there are different activities we see in the project area, and we have to integrate it as we start to think about how we are designing the street. We are getting great feedback from the community in terms of different types of gathering activities they would like to see, including seating, small performances, and art exhibitions. Similarly, there is a desire for passive activities such as energy production, sustainability, community garden, and a huge desire for street trees. And then finally, there is a great desire for having playful activities all along the corridor, especially as it comes to playgrounds and interactive installations. Dina Bilzer was here last time. She provided a summary of the economic analysis. The key thing, as you all design it in the different breakout groups, is to keep in mind that State Street has strong opportunities for strengthening its experiential-based activities, given the beautiful setting that we have out here. In terms of sales performance, there's been additional analysis done. The key critical thing to keep in mind is restaurants and bars are the key top performers, and specialty retail is the only category that has declined in sales from 2016 to 2021. We have started to share, and we did it last time, about different case studies. We have started to look at Pearl Street. As you know, it's about 4 blocks. Great Street, which has play integrated into it. It's a very successful case study to keep in mind about how to make it pedestrian only and integrate businesses and historic buildings, very comparable to what we have out here. Key things to keep in mind is that they have a great mix of uses. The outdoor dining is very popular, and in 2022, they have started to implement a 5-year pilot, including looking at different rates for outdoor dining. Dina Belzer from Strategic Economics also talked about Greenville, how it's one of the fastest growing downtowns, has attracted businesses from all over the country, and how it's using TIF financing for successfully creating great places, while still integrating a lot of small businesses and also allowing for a wide variety of uses, including retail as well as restaurants. San Luis Obispo is also something we have beginning to study with regards to their downtown dine-out plaza option and the program that they have wheeled out earlier this year. The key takeaways, especially with regards to outdoor dining, is to keep in mind that it is a very important part of the experience. It is typically design regulated, and there are a diverse mix of ways you can make it happen. The other key takeaways looking at the case studies has been that great streets do have a mix of wide modes of travel, including pedestrians, bicyclists, and local stores are preferred. And finally, private investment and additional tax assessments always help in realizing the dreams that we have as a community. You all saw the wonderful maps that I showed with regards to the utilities that we have to keep in mind as we go in the future of designing it, especially with different types of utilities, but also with stormwater, keeping in mind that there is an opportunity to look at the street to start to mitigate some of the stormwater impacts so we can attract new investment. Tess already mentioned the next steps. The survey is on till the end of the month, so if you know anybody, make them do the survey. And then we will be taking all this feedback and coming up with 3 preliminary concepts in February. And with that, Daniel.
Okay, the rest of this meeting today is all about SSAC member discussion, so we wanted to see if any of you had observations from the process conducted so far. What have you learned? What are questions still remaining in your minds? What do you think are some of the key takeaways from this outreach process to date? And so, Chairman Davis, we can just have an open discussion here. Following this, we will go right into our design workshop or design charrette process. We have enough people to have 2 groups, and we'll let you and the staff divide that up accordingly. So we have a good mix in each of the 2 groups. Observations, feedback on what you've been hearing, feedback on the feedback, in other words. What would you say so far? It looks like you're ready to go, Peter. I could tell. Any thoughts? Or go ahead.
So just, I'm wondering with the time of year and the return level of the survey, are you comfortable that it's, there's probably a survey word, but are you comfortable that it's credible in its response rate and the responses? And if not, is there, I would imagine there's an extreme tail off for the next couple weeks. Is there a benefit to continuing it through sometime in January?
Well, first of all, it's an extraordinary large number of responses, and we will do a post-stratification to look at how the survey population compares to the Santa Barbara population as a whole. So that's one thing we can do to check its representational quality. I think that's what you're getting at. But we have no problem leaving it open for a longer period. Tess, what would you say?
We can certainly leave it open. Looking at the next steps for this project, we're going to be synthesizing all of the data, and then coming back about April timeframe will be when we have the next community workshop or outreach event, where we're going to be asking for feedback on 3 preliminary design concepts. So if we do keep it open, I think we could do that for a couple more weeks in January, but I would want to close it with enough time to be able to do some analysis with all of that data and then be able to get that ready for an April timeframe.
I will say, because of the very large sample size of over 5,000 responses, as we add those in, these percentages are not changing very radically. So that pattern seems to be holding up. So that kind of tells us that we've reached a point of saturation to some degree. So we can monitor that with this latest round of responses once we tabulate them. So Ken, did you have any observations or feedback on the process so far and kind of what you've been hearing? Go ahead, you can fight over the mic, but go ahead.
Well, sure. I guess just to start with, I mean, it's kind of a self-selected group, but everybody that I saw at both events was there because they have a sense of attachment and generally affection for State Street and downtown Santa Barbara. So that's not what I always hear from everybody I talk to, but there was lots of enthusiasm, and I think what was interesting to me is how diverse that interest is. That they were across the entire, age range from youth to seniors, and they use it in different ways, and their attachment is quite different. But it all comes from a place of already, despite its deficiencies, a great amount of enthusiasm. So that was really upbeat.
So Ken, you're speaking of the Friday, Saturday sessions we just had? Or?
Also the people I spoke to at the earlier session in early November.
Good, okay.
But definitely on Saturday, for sure.
Okay.
People who chose to show up on a rainy day in Santa Barbara, which some people won't leave their homes in this town in the rain, so that was pretty good. While I have the mic, I have a question.
Yes.
For the MIG folks, which is this. I guess my sense would be that when you do this kind of work in many different communities, that much of what you hear is the same, because we're dealing with the same species. I assume you're mostly working with humans and getting feedback from them. And so what I'm curious about is your sense of, if you can talk a little bit about what are you seeing or hearing here that's different, or that's not necessarily what you expected as you come here?
Right. Well, I would say there are similarities in all the communities we work in. However, what is evident here is the level of intensity and the level of participation. That is unique, I believe. And certainly the understanding of the role that State Street plays in the larger urban fabric, that seems to be well understood, at least by the people that we've been hearing from. I think those are standout points I would want to comment on. So maybe not surprisingly, those are the high points. I think an understanding of some of the urban design elements that we talked about as professionals, but it's in the water supply. You know how they say, like Chicago, even the taxi drivers know all about the architecture in that city. Well, I think there's a lot of knowledge of the character and quality and history of this community that comes through as we talk to people. There's a lot of passion, to be sure. So what else have you heard? So I'd ask Robin, maybe, because you heard 4 different groups you were facilitating and you had to tune in, but I know you've also been party to earlier activities that have been going on for the last several months.
Sure. I thought that the workshops, both the first and second, were really inspiring to see what the community, to be able to see what the vision is through the eyes of the diverse participants. I thought it was also very healthy to do the workshops in groups of 6, 7, 8 people, and to see the divergent but similar opinions, and then have to work it through together at a table and figure out a way to support each other's divergent opinions and actually come up with a design that at the end most were feeling really quite good about and could see how that could come together. I think some of the biggest things that I heard repeatedly, that people wanted to keep a pedestrian-centric space. I was surprised with how many people wanted to keep the length of the space, but diversify kind of each area by zones. I heard a lot of people want to add kind of a central area that was more focused on housing and passive play and family-oriented activities. I heard a lot of focus on bikes or no bikes, but at the end of the day, if bikes were present, it would have to just be a safe, separated space. And so that was a consistent conversation of how to do that appropriately. I heard a lot of small-scale e-shuttle in the center of State Street from Sola all the way to the wharf and back. I heard a lot of public transportation around the surrounding area from on Chapala and Anacapa was kind of the focus, similarly to the survey. A lot of requests for bike parking facilities and having different types of uses for night and weekends, and planning for families because everybody else comes. And then also a lot of focus on making sure that it's very clean, safe, and that there's diverse landscaping and some movable landscaping, as well as a lot of seating. So those were some of the key things that I heard repeatedly come to the top, and I'd be curious if that's similar to what everybody heard as well.
Excellent. Well, you've been doing some of the work we're going to be doing as a full-on comprehensive content analysis of the feedback. So thank you for identifying those themes. I heard a lot of overlap too, a lot of consistency, some divergency, of course, but as you said, there was good spirit in the rooms as we were working through it, a lot of camaraderie and desire to come together around a solution.
I just wanted to add one other thing, that I thought there was a very diverse representation of ages, backgrounds, ways they use the street. So residents, whether they live downtown or they live elsewhere, but they regularly come, businesses, and teenagers all the way up to, I believe there's an 83-year-old gentleman in one of our groups. So I was impressed with the amount of participation over the course of the time. Absolutely.
Excellent. Let's hear from others that were present at any of the meetings. Peter, go ahead.
I think Robin summarized what I heard pretty completely. There was a consistent call for a shuttle that was run during long hours and often. There was heavy consensus on that. And I think the other thing that struck me is, in the group I was in, was they all want to come downtown, but they don't necessarily find a way to shop. Either the shops aren't there that they buy, or there was a real concern that we weren't providing opportunities for shopping. So they didn't have answers necessarily. They were just kind of miffed. So to me, it really highlighted what our mission is. We have to find a way that this is a vibrant retail community. And I'm not sure we're doing enough focusing on that. And sometimes we get lost in the minutia and we forget what we're really trying to solve. And so we need to attract people downtown, but it can't be just all about their cycling through the downtown or walking. We need to create real economic viability. And I think that needs to be job one.
Good.
Here, or we're going to lose the opportunity. So that would be my greatest feedback. And actually, one of my questions to you guys on what you're studying, I go down State Street routinely at all times of day, many times a week. And the thing that has really struck me is at all blocks, doesn't matter which of the blocks, because all of them are quite different, people still, 90% of the time, are walking on the sidewalks. So the closure is actually highlighted that they still want to gravitate to the stores. There's still that natural instinct to go to the buildings and the activity. So I didn't know if you've got any data on that, but mine's just observationally. So, I mean, some of your data has blown me away, like it's safer than when it was open. But I would really like to know that kind of information, because I think it's helpful for us to actually end up with the right product.
Well, one idea is to do some sort of behavior tracking, so we can actually do counts of where people are, what they're doing in the space, block by block, to give us a definitive answer to that, so we could be more, based on data in answering that question. Your observation may be borne out, and we might do some test behavior observations. We have methodologies for doing that. Did you have a comment, Mike?
There we go. I'll just add, I agree, some detailed PED counts would be really interesting. We did those on the 16th Street Mall in Denver and really understood where people were walking, who was walking, times a day, were they in the center median or on the edges. But the tendency to be on the edges follows, you see that a lot, and I think there's a lot of knowledge about behavioral psychology, right? Your brain wants something stimulating every 4 seconds or so. At a pedestrian walking pace, that's about 25 feet. And so every 25 feet, the storefront provides you something interesting to stimulate your brain. And so I think that's, part of what's behind why people continue to walk on the storefronts. And as we get into alternatives in detail, there's some to support retail activity. Having people walking against the storefronts, seeing those shops might be, works with how people, behave already, but also supports that retail.
Okay, other observations from your efforts out there, Michael? And then Dave?
No, go ahead, Michael.
Thanks,
I'll
Chair.
say last.
To Peter's comment, this is a battle of our household too. We come downtown. I want to walk on the sidewalk, not necessarily because I want to walk on the sidewalk, just because I don't want to get nailed in the back by an e-bike, or I don't want my kids to chase a butterfly and get nailed by an e-bike. But my wife's the other way. Let's walk in the street. There's more room. So I think the safety may be the driving factor, or at least partially attributing to the factor. But I was there Friday night, facilitated a group, came back Saturday to participate as a resident of Santa Barbara. But the themes from Friday night, from my group, and then the report out, I think Robin got a lot of them. There was no unanimous consent or on bikes. Should bikes stay? Should they go? I even had a husband and wife in my group, and they could not agree. But there was a yes, but if we do keep bikes, the status quo is not what stays. A lot of talk about dense housing, which would in turn drive the commercial uses that support residents. More passive places to sit down that don't cost a cup of coffee. And then especially for kids and teens, there was definitely a lot of people wanted to see some kind of play structures or interactive stuff. And then the teens feel that they're kind of left out of the whole thing. It's, the grown-ups got the shops and restaurants, the kids get the playground, what do the teens get? So we need to look out for them. And then the other theme that came out of my group, and I also heard it from other groups, was to get rid of the curb and to go flush across.
Yeah, we heard that quite often during the report outs from the breakout groups. Thank you very much, Michael. Pete, Dave?
Yeah, I came to all the sessions and observed all of you guys, and you guys did a great job in the sessions themselves. And going to Peter's point, I'd like to know the future of retail. I mean, I spent 25 years building retail base downtown, but retail is changing so much. In this process, I think we need to ask ourselves, what is the future of retail and how does it fit within downtown? I was amazed from both Friday and Saturday, the consistency at the 30,000 foot level. Generally, keep it closed. Generally, keep it flush, build it flush. Make a palette that you can basically change with time. The idea, again, going to the question of the storefronts, a lot of people talking about if you move the restaurant back against, with the flush thing, restaurants back against their own buildings, then you'd have this undulating area within the area. A circulator shuttle, for sure, and hopefully we could find some kind of designer, I don't want to call it designer, specialized vehicle to go down the middle that actually was smaller and worked for downtown. E-bikes have spoiled the porridge for everybody, all right? Again, everybody likes bicycles and everybody would love it to be there, but e-bikes and the experience that we've had has really put a sour taste in everyone's mouth. And so everything that's been said relative to, you gotta design it so that it works. We'd love to have them, but you gotta make it work. The zones, I saw a pretty good consensus of the zones, from arts to the civic activity to the entertainment. boom, boom, boom. I
Right.
saw that up and down the street in that regard. So, again, great participation. The age distribution of people that involved was spectacular. I didn't expect that, right? So I was really, really pleased to see that. And the consistency over the 3 days generally, I thought also was reinforcing in that regard.
I would say in regards to your question about what is the future of retail, that is a central question. What we've heard so far, and this is not just from our point of view, but out there, economists, experiential retail. So for example, you're not just selling cutlery or knives, you have axe throwing in the store. Now they don't laugh, they have it in St. Helena.
We have it here.
Because you can't do that online. And people are looking for an antidote to the digital world. They want the analog, and that's why vinyl records have come back, because people like reading the liner notes and doing what it took to put a record on the turntable. It's just an antidote to the world we certainly now experience. So it has to be something unique that draws them. And like you said, Matt and Peter, that's that 25-second chance to attract the human eye and the brain to get down the street to the next intersection and the next intersection. People attract more people. William White said that. So we have to think about arts as a programming element. People love the art display that we had in the room. So thanks again to the arts community, because it really livened the space. People came in just to see that, and then they got interested in what we were doing. So there's a clue there, I think, that we can build on.
Again, I see the differential and experiential types of things, which is more, if you will, recreational in that regard.
Yeah.
But the old pedestrian shopper goods is essentially what really has been undercut by a number of factors in that
Exactly.
regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Robin, you've got your hand on the trigger
One
there.
other I came up with one other thing that I was thinking about. The space that we used at 821 State Street was a perfect way to kind of be inspired by the future, because it's a new mixed-use space. It's turning into a portion of housing and retail.
That's right.
And I think that there was a lot of conversation around that, because there is a need for smaller spaces for retail, close to other things and involving other things. And so I think that was a really great way to showcase what could be possible in that environment.
Yeah, on that point, Dave?
Yeah, a Newshawk article today with pictures. Really, if you haven't seen it, go take a look at it.
And the smaller footprint retail opens up the possibilities for starter businesses that can't afford large lease rates, so they can maybe pay for a smaller space. So that's another thing we found in other cities where we're working. It's changing the zoning to allow for smaller scale retail operations, pop-up retail, and things of that nature that also draw people onto the street. So let's see, others, Nadra, yeah.
Yes, so I was able to attend on Saturday morning, and many of the themes that we've already discussed, I found that that was reflected in the group that we worked with. Me and Ken got to co-facilitate, so that was really fun. And our group, and we saw this in a couple other groups, they designed a curve, windy path.
Yeah, meandering.
So yeah, meandering, exactly, thank you. And so that was a different way to address just the vision. And so, and within those spaces to add park spaces, performance spaces, and also the divergent ideas regarding pedestrian and cycling. Our first exercise, we spent a good portion of that going back and forth in terms of how that can work. And we landed on a design that would separate, stratify the space for pedestrians and for cyclists, and creating natural barriers and also speed bumps between those barriers, so that if there were cyclists that were going at a really high rate, it'd slow them down for the safety of the pedestrians. Also, the shuttle, there was an idea of a micro-transit shuttle, and then focusing on an economic development process to streamline, to make it easier for business owners to get into the storefronts, so that could spur more economic growth. And in the November event, there was a difference in the actual engagement portion, because being able to work on the design, that sometimes with the passion, there's a certain amount of angst that comes with it that you feel. And so I felt that when we were able to work through our thoughts and ideas, that angst subsided into energy, exciting energy, like, oh yes, let's look and see what's possible. And in the November event, it was very positive, but there was still a little bit of that angst and the idea and of the attention to the unhoused and how we will really work with that in this design concept. I didn't see that come up so much this time around, but it certainly has come up often. And aside from this engagement process, and talking to the community at large, just in passing with friends and colleagues, that is a big topic that does come up in the conversation.
Excellent, that's great. Thank you. Any other insights from the experience? Yes, Suzanne?
There are 2 points I just wanted to bring up. I think that the group that I was working with and the people that I've spoken to about is that they like the idea of having multiple modes of transportation share the street. So pedestrians, bikes, and possibly transit or vehicles.
The shared street concept.
Shared street concept. And it doesn't have to be the same all the way through, but that concept. And the other takeaway that I got from the group that I worked with, facilitated with on Friday, was State Street's a very linear, it's very linear. And there was an attempt made in 2 different locations to kind of break that, create places where people could pause and have a more open space, more space for gathering, not just moving. And so those 2 locations, one of those was at the museum area, and the other location was over by De La Guerra Plaza and Paseo Nuevo. So kind of thinking about having a place to pause and gather for larger events.
And there could be performances, either scheduled or impromptu.
And it could be the playground, it could be the interactive areas, things like that. Yeah.
That makes sense. So it really becomes a focal point. But as Dave had said, there was a lot of reinforcement of the so-called arts district and the entertainment district, and then some kind of central area like you described that would fit right into that framework.
Yeah, and I don't know if the mixed use, the housing element, I mean, if that could play into that or not. But I think that would be nice to have a large marketplace or a plaza or something like that.
Interesting, good. Well, we also did want to provide space for any broader community comments, so I don't know if there's a way to entertain that from online and also here in the room.
I think we can open up for public comment, anybody from the audience or online.
Yeah, so if there's anybody here, you would need to come out to the podium, please, and then we can get you picked up for the online audience members as well. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Push, there we go.
There we go.
Hi, I'm Molly Pearson. I submitted a speaker slip. Thanks. It was great to hear from you folks at MIG and staff. I participated in a lot of the outreach efforts to date. It's been great. 2 kind of concerns or questions I have is, are you making sure that you are reaching the Latinx community? I see that you have future efforts to do that. I just haven't seen that in the participation I've been doing. And then also the future users, the youth, the teens, that kind of thing. So that was just one concern I wanted to voice. And the other thing is that, State Street is a street. It's an important part of our transportation infrastructure. It is our gateway to the harbor, to the beaches. I've used it for decades to ride my bike up and down, especially up, because when I'm going downhill, I go faster. But riding back up State Street is a wonderful thing. It's a kind of a calm way to just sort of ride my bike home. So I just think that's really important. And a lot of the outreach events, people are dreaming big and thinking about almost creating a park-like situation. And my voice is that I'd like for you guys to just really retain flexibility so that, you know, cars, other wheeled devices, we're getting more people using modality, especially lower income people that can't afford a car and insurance or, you know. So let's maintain flexibility and be able to accommodate transit and other wheeled devices. The last thing I wanted to say, of course, under limited and safe circumstances, the last thing is, can you please post your presentation on your website? I didn't find it this afternoon.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
do that. I just want to say on the Latinx outreach, we have been conducting meetings entirely in Spanish, and we go to the churches and other places in the Hispanic community, and we also working with community-based organizations to achieve a deeper level of outreach there. So that is happening, plus surveys are in both English and Spanish, and we can segregate those responses just to see if there's any significant differences in how people are responding. Yes, sir, you had a hand up, and maybe you can come up to the microphone, please.
Thank you. Guido Pizzi, I'm a business owner. I own a restaurant on State Street, so I have maybe a partisan view, but you have to accept it. So I would like to start from a wider vision, so the long-term vision for State Street. If the objective is to revitalize a portion of the town that is suffering so much, I believe that the only chance is to bring back, as I was discussed even in advance, people living in the area, so not just walking through. So making residential portion on the State Street is essential. Rezoning, there are a lot of buildings, for instance, in my block, in the 10,000, there is the former Bank of West building, is a big building completely empty. That could host 10, 20 families, and people live there, and they revitalize the town. Coming to a more short-term vision. So I saw some of the figures that appear on a few slides, why people is going to State Street, and it looks that dining or food is still one of the major reasons why people is coming downtown. So obviously that is the partisan part. Obviously the city should in this way, in this context, support a restaurant, because they are the engine for the time being of the revitalization of the State Street. So the parklet, charging, and this kind of stuff, they have a reason, but keep into consideration, you are making to pay the one that can bring more value to State Street. So if the most of the costs are cleaning, okay, we are cleaning the parklet, and all the rest is all the rest of the businesses. So making restaurant to survive, making restaurant more effective, giving light and vibe to that portion of State Street will allow people to come in, and it will be beneficial for any other business. And retail are absolutely needed on State Street. I would like to just to spend a word about bikes. My experience is that we should distinguish between engine-powered vehicles and human-powered vehicles. So a regular bike can go up and down on State Street without any problem. The major risks are for electric bikes. They run so fast up and down the State Street. They are very silent, and they are extremely dangerous. People that walk on the street, considering that it is a promenade, they move from one side to the other side of the State Street, assuming that nothing is coming back. But these electric bikes are really, really dangerous. The same is for skateboard and this kind of vehicle. So I wonder if in the option that and pilot that the Transport Commission is analyzing is also maybe an experiment of complete ban of this motorized vehicle, that to see what is going to happen. Very last comment.
Okay.
99% of the bikers are not stopping at any business on State Street. It's just through traffic.
Yeah.
It can be diverted on other lanes. Sorry.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments and feedback here. There's another gentleman with a hand up. Go ahead, sir.
My feeling is, that before anything needs to happen, why not find out what the removal of the parklets are going to do? Like, when they're gone, are they gonna move into the storefronts? Are they gonna, what's gonna happen there? That's easy to do. That's with no money spent. That's a very easy thing to do. The next thing is, what if the bicycles were eliminated? Just no bicycles. Okay, I know everybody gets excited about this, but why not try it? Why not try and see what happens? This is easy to do. The other thing would be to, why not do a little transit up and down State Street, slow moving like we talked about, some slow moving thing to get the people into the area, and see if you can convince the vacant store people, the owners of the store, to rent them. What's up with that? What's up with that? It's been vacant. They're vacant. 25 storefronts, something like that before COVID. Why is the funk zone working? What's happening down there? Who's looking at that? I think these are kind of cheap, inexpensive things to deal with.
Okay, a sort of a natural field experiment comparing the funk zone. A natural field experiment comparing the funk zone to the State Street.
Do 13 blocks. I mean,
Yeah.
why bite off this huge thing?
Right.
Why not just do a little area at a time?
Right.
Try it out. I know we
Okay.
talked about if you go on State Street right now, I think all the trees have to go. There's no room.
Okay.
If you're going to expand the side, I mean, this is like a shocker.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at it.
Okay.
There's just not enough room. So anyway, okay. And I did attend the Saturday morning one, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
There was a lot of conflict, but as somebody said here, it got resolved. We just said, okay, you can do it.
All right, thank you very much. Those are great comments. Okay, anybody else in the room or online that wish to comment? So you want to make a check there? Dave?
There are no raised hands online. Thank you so much.
Okay, does that mean we should move into the design
Yeah, we
charrette
will
portion?
close. Are we going to take a short break to rearrange tables, or what are we doing?
Let's do this intro first, and then we'll do the break, because that'll save
There you
us
go.
some time.
There you go.
Okay, in that respect, McCool is going to guide us through the discussion.
Now we're going to come to the fun part, which is for you all to actually do the design exercise, and there are 3 of them. The first one is looking at the corridor level and looking at how you would like to design the corridor, looking at 3-4 key questions from different modes of travel that you all have been sharing your thoughts. Number 1, what part of State Street should remain closed to traffic, to automobiles, to prioritize pedestrians over other users? Second of all, where should the bicyclists be? What kind of bicycle facilities should be not just on State, if you don't want to see it on State, but on Anacapa, Chapala, the cross streets. The third, which has been a lot of great feedback, is where should the transit, the small e-shuttle, the ideas that you have heard, where should transit be in the project area? The second exercise is, I apologize, there are different color pens, as the facilitators will tell you, to mark out these different options. The second exercise is focusing on what you all have also shared, character areas or districts. Would you like to see an art district or a retail or an entertainment, and where should that be? And then the third exercise moves at a more block level, which is looking at 1 or 2 blocks and actually beginning to design it at 1 to 20 scale as to where would you like to see where people are walking or other mobility facilities, but more importantly, also looking at the activities, be it play or gathering or other things that we have heard. How does all of these mobility as well as activity improvements come together? And with that, we will also request then each breakout group to report back, and Daniel's going to talk about that too. I just talked about it at block level.
All right, good. All right, any questions about the exercise? We're ready to move into that phase. And we have 2 groups of the steering committee 1 and 2, Group 1 and Group 2, and Tess has the assignments.
So for group 1 over here, we'll have Ken, Robin, Ed, and Mike Becker. And then group 2 on the other side will be Dave, Suzanne, Nadra, Mike Jordan, and Peter.
Okay, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to rearrange so the tables are clear for the maps and the diagrams and the pens and the markers. So take a 5-minute break, and we'll do the rearrange. Is that okay? All right, thank you. And everybody in the room can stay and be involved and watch the proceedings.
For those online, we're going to be in breakout groups for probably about an hour in total, and then we will come back and report out for each of the groups. So if you are online and you want to stick around, you can stay online, and then we will come back and each group will report what they came up with.
Okay. Let's go. So we have two reports. So the big picture schematic and then the detailed block. And do we have a presenter for group one? Yes, we do. Okay. Yeah, you can go first. Okay, group two.
The first shall be the last. Okay, so our group, Tess is going to help me out. My thoughts for this was a toddler with watercolors listening to Mozart. So do what you want with that. Basically, what that means is we just had a lot of concepts, and just when we thought, okay, this is what we're going to do, that thought and that idea would flip. So originally, we were thinking that we would have mobility. So we would have the bikes, and we would have pedestrians, and then we would have a electric microtransit shuttle that would run all the way center line through State Street to the wharf. So that was our concept there. Then we explored the idea of, and this was from Elias's idea of building out bike or cyclist paseos within that. So while we would have this complete pass-through, we would have some meandering cyclist paseos, and then we would also have some open-air structures with parks and activity spaces throughout. So that was our original concept. And then towards the end, we switched it and thought, well, maybe we don't want to necessarily, we started with the pass-through again, but then we thought, well, possibly we can meander with the transportation. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit lopsided here. This is when we decided to structure it within our block. So we had the 800 and 900 block. So with here, we wanted to focus on housing and build more housing structures, and really focused on trying to brighten up this area with more economic development and looking at ways that we could possibly do that. And we wanted to look at how we could bring in tourists, how we could connect this area to the beach, how we could have the shuttle, and then also be able to support the transportation and pass through of people with different abilities. So that was what we were looking at in this concept. And then our last thought, are you guys still with me here? We would, like I said, the description that I started out with, there was a reason. So the last place that we went with this idea is to, instead of having the pass-through for that complete area, to separate and have this area, so the 300 to the 500 block, and over here from the 1200 to 1000 block, open to vehicles, motor vehicles, and then closing this off just for pedestrian mobility here. So that is where we landed. But then as we were finishing that, we were thinking, well, maybe that, if we're trying to build economic development here, closing this off to traffic may not fit that need. So it really honed into us how difficult this process really is. I think that's what we came out of it, and I hope that I was able to articulate that to where my team members thought that that's what we did. So.
The only thing I'd add on that is that we had no consensus at all, right? But we had some consensus that I think we all agreed that we would like a curbless plaza field the whole length, and we were unable to really figure out what we wanted to do relative to the modes of transportation outside of, I think everyone wanted to figure out how to get a shuttle that would move people up the corridor. But yeah, something that helped move people particularly from the other side of the freeway as well, as solve some of the problems with a promenade that's a mile and a half long. So that I think we were universal on, right? Everything from there got changed. No agreement, but we had a good time.
Okay, I'm very glad you. All of us, especially me, wanted to talk about this and think about it way more, and so I'm even uncomfortable just verbalizing initial ideas, but we'll share some things. Let's see. So up here, we talked about making sure that we have some thoughtful circulation around the theater area. We did think that it's important to be able to still have some vehicular drop-offs around our key theaters. So not that we couldn't have some closures here, but we really need to think about how that all flows. We did have a good agreement on a pedestrian area throughout the entirety of this space, but mainly from approximately, did we say, around Fig through Gutierrez, correct? And also having an e-shuttle, a slow e-shuttle go through here on the fire lane, sharing with a bike lane as well. And so that was a big discussion. We did also discuss having down here a lot of greenery on the sides of our fire lane meets shuttle area meets bike lane. So that's what's going on in this area. We had a quality debate about how to navigate the pedestrian area and keep it closest to the buildings. I think there was a majority agreement that that was the case. I had some concerns about that, but I think that it was a really good discussion. Let's see. We said that here, this is the gateway to the whole area, so we wanted to have some kind of, this is Gutierrez here, this is the 300, 400, and 500 here. And so, since this is such a significant gateway, we wanted to have entry points at each side of the block, so whether you're coming up in the middle of State Street or either side, you know you've arrived. And so we also talked about having some play spaces in the Paseo area, so around, really revitalizing the area around the 99-cent store, as well as the adult store and other areas here. So we had a lot of thinking to do there. What did I miss, team?
That's good. Yeah, I think the one thing that I could just add is with you had the fire lane / wheeled route down the middle, landscaping to keep it contained, and then you're left with about 25 feet of real estate on each side, and it would include sidewalk and then I think somewhat flex space where it could be dining if the storefront rents it or needs it. It could be the city moves benches or other kind of things into the area to activate it, but somewhat flexible area.
Agreed on the similar point that your group agreed on is that we would have a similar, I guess, from the storefront to the other side, all paved the same height and kind of having some different cobbles or different structures that define different areas. And we did have the shuttle go all the way to the beach. We also had dedicated bike lanes for faster travel on the exterior of the area. And I think that's the more, I'm sorry?
I think we said to close the one block a day
Right, to have that kind of a sense of plaza, civic space area. Thank you.
Okay, let's give Group 1 a hand. Thank you. So once again, there were some similarities rising to the top. I think you were talking about what we'd call a flush street when you talked about from building edge to building edge, and the idea of the trolley, that was also in the group number 2. So a lot of ideas coming together. What about any other comments from Group 1 about to augment this? And what about the rest of the group?
From Roxana, online as well.
Roxana, you want to chime in? Now's a good time.
Excellent, thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Just checking.
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Well, let me just start by saying I really appreciate the presentations. I can't see what you guys are looking at, but I can hear you, and the lists that both groups have said are very, very similar to the group, the work that I've done or the comments I have. So I'm not going to say them again. The only thing I wanted to add was back when I participated in the AIA charrette, I was put into one of the corridor groups. There was 4 corridor groups. And one of the design ideas that we had in our group that has come up again and again, and people have contacted me to discuss, I just wanted to add it here. It has to do with the area, the block where Paseo Nuevo is. We have City Hall and Plaza de la Guerra, Casa de la Guerra right there behind a narrow row of buildings, and trying to find a location there that would make an outdoor open space, sort of like a civic gathering space, a public space that you say, this is the heart, or let's meet here when you think about the center of downtown. At the time, we were not looking at any limitations. So one of the ideas that obviously doesn't work very well because you don't have property rights was to remove the Macy's building and create an open park, an area that is open to the street side onto Ortega. It's open to the Paseo side of the entry point of walking into the Paseo Nuevo, and creating an open green space, a place where you could have possibly concerts or outdoor events, sit and gather and have restaurants along the Paseo and open into a garden. Now, that's just an idea without limits, and I just wanted to place it here as a thought. I don't know where we put something like that. That would be a dream location, but if we could create a green area along the street, somehow in that area that allows us to connect our future city center with where City Hall might be, was the idea of that location. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for allowing me to pitch it.
Thanks, Roxana.
No,
That's great.
Just if I can add, because Roxana in spirit was in our group, we with no boundaries, there was 2 areas we talked about blowing up, and one was Macy's, and the other was the line of buildings that separate State Street from De La Guerra Plaza.
Interesting.
And that, but both of them to become really a stopping point, a resting point, a meeting point, a central point in the center of this whole project. So lots of fantasies of explosions.
Yeah, but those can often lead to practical solutions as well, so.
Group 2 liked that idea too.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, well, let's give all of yourselves a round of applause, because this is exactly what we're looking for. And it's interesting because when vision and concept meets physical reality.
Well, you might recall, Daniel, I said earlier how excited I was with the participation. And I said, but now the hard part begins. There you have it.
Yeah, and there's good participation here and a good feeling and a good attitude. That's what we need to actually push forward.
Yeah.
How appropriate, ending 2022 and looking at 2023
Let's
ahead
go
of
to
us.
Greta for a second. Greta, just to open it for public comment. Nobody in the room here. Is there anybody online? Not seeing any?
No, there are no raised hands.
Okay,
Thank you.
we end public comment and
Well, I was just waxing on here poetically, but yes. Is there anything more about 2023 other than launching into a canvas of possibilities? And I think what we heard last week and in the previous 2 months is going to really populate our designs. We're talking about building a online or a digital 3D model of State Street so we can interrogate the model and look at it. When you start looking at 3 dimensions, that's another whole situation there. And maybe even do some block by block physical models so you can actually examine it and touch it and get a little more detailed feel of it. Even though we're all in a digital world when it comes to design these days, there is still a role for that physical model where you can touch it and look at it as a team. So,
Okay, Daniel, one point, Ken and I have been talking, I think he'd like to give a little bit of input as to where we're going also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to looking at and engaging in and talking about the design possibilities. But it strikes me that that is only one piece of the purview that we were invited to step into, and I just want to have a sense for how these other things are going to flow in. So there was a list of big topics, and some of them seem pretty central to me. One is about economic vitality, and design is a piece of that, but there's lots of other pieces to economic vitality.
Sure.
One is around housing. Which is really key. Certainly, the interplay of homelessness with this project is going to have a lot to say about the success and vitality about that. There's a list of these things, and so I think Paseo Nuevo is really central and really complex. But if we didn't talk about it here in the next year, we would really be missing some of the opportunities. So. I don't know where these thematic areas are going to come into the process.
Well, we'll make sure we program that in, and we'll have sessions, maybe 1 or 2 or multiple sessions devoted to those singular topics so we can explore them in depth. But you're right, we have the idea that this has to be strategically driven. And by that I mean, like Peter was saying, there has to be an economic viability or feasibility to our recommendations. We don't want to create more dead space. It's got to be active, programmed, and a live space. So everything you just said there needs to be discussed in depth, and maybe separate meetings or good portions of them devoted to those singular topics so we can get into this kind of in-depth discussion, because I think this was very productive. Other thoughts before we wrap things up, Peter?
Along those lines, it'd probably be super helpful for us to be informed on what's going on in with the Paseo Nuevo.
Okay.
Understanding all the ownership structure, what's being discussed, what opportunities exist through encouragement for the private owners and/or public options, if any exist.
I'm thinking of like a class syllabus where we have our meetings and we start to create topics for those meetings, so we'll be sure to cover them in sufficient depth and not at a superficial, but really get into the nitty-gritty of each one.
Yeah,
So
good
think
idea.
about those topics like Ken was just putting us and reminding us of what had been the charge of the SSAC starting off from City Council.
Yep.
Any other comments? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a comment. It seems like when we are discussing the State Street, it's always in terms of the restaurants and bars. The restaurant's this, the restaurant's that, the seating is this, they can't, the kitchen's back there. And we're ignoring the retail component that I think is really, really important for State Street to be successful. And we need to see MIG with ideas, not necessarily how to bring, retail business in, but with ideas in their plan that a businessman can look at and say, yeah, I want to be in that space right there. That's important to me, to be in that space. I'm not concerned about the bar or the restaurant, but I want to be in that space. And we need to hear more of that, and not focusing exclusively on the restaurants.
Okay.
Who now are, they're the chatter. And when they find out they got to pay $5 a square foot for outside space, for which nobody is sitting in between January and whenever, March, we're going to see maybe restaurants go away. Who knows? Outside. So I want to see what's in store for retail in Santa Barbara on State Street.
Okay, very good. Maybe a focus group with just retailers or business people could be another.
I think that's a really good idea. And
Yeah.
again, as I've said, I think retail's changing, and I think we have to have that discussion.
You know, because we've had sessions, McCool remembers this up in Sacramento, we're revitalizing these streets and everything, and when you do the ground truthing with developers and business people, they go, that pro forma, that's not gonna work. And then it quickly changes the thinking from just pure design to those practical issues that you two are raising. So that's an important direction. Robin?
I think it will also be important for this group to get into deep detail about the existing resources that go into downtown and what they're used for and what the gap is now from where we want to get to where we want to go, because that will be a huge portion of the success of whatever we put together, and that needs to be really talked about in detail. I think that goes to what you were saying, but I think there's like the parking element, there's the maintenance element, there's, you know, the street cleaning element, there's circulation, there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
And I think all of it is absolutely crucial to the success of the next steps.
Yeah, you're talking about
And
maintenance.
the programming.
Operations, programming, there's a lot of layers to it, this machine that is called State Street.
I just want to emphasize this programming, because it's what's going to bring people down. It's what's going to bring life down. And again, you all have dealt with this all over the place, and so to me, that it's paired with design. It's not just like it's human design basically, and we should be actively engaging that conversation.
So at MIG, we talk about 3 layers of this layer cake: place, programming, management. You have to have all 3, especially now in the public realm. You create a park, it has to be actively programmed in order to make it truly accessible for all people, all users, young, old, all times of the day, as best as we can. Robin?
Briefly, in regards to programming, I want to invite you all out, since we're right here.
I know.
Outside at the Museum of Art. There's a candlelight concert series tonight, goes till 7. It's an example of a type of programming that we can utilize downtown. Another type of programming is this Saturday from 12 to 3 at the Stork Placida Plaza. So that's just slightly off the street. And then there's going to be a youth makers market on the street. So that's the 700 block. And that's part of a 15 event Season of Cheer series from November, December. So it really is a good kind of way to look at what else might be possible and how much resources went into that and how many more resources might need to go into the diversity of the space.
Yeah.
One thing which hasn't been mentioned and wasn't mentioned anywhere, but Tom Parker, some of you know Tom Parker of the Hutton Parker Foundation. Tom's basically starting to really promote higher education downtown. He brought Westmont downtown. UCSB has facilities downtown, arts and lectures programs downtown. In this town, higher education needs to have a major role downtown.
Yes. That's excellent thinking. And, you know, it's fun to watch the BIDs across the United States. We work with a lot of them, but they started off with clean and safe. Everything was clean and safe. Then they started into urban design. They started to get more into placemaking. Now the biggest trend is programming. They have to activate the space that they help to create. You can't leave it alone. So you're all on trend there, and this is especially true here in this particular climate where we do have significant people that are unhoused and they need places, and this public space is one of those opportunities. So programming helps to address a lot of different issues there. Any other comments? We're ready to wrap up and close.
I just have one, and this may or may not fit within our context, but I just wanted to mention it, is the idea of some sort of childcare resources or facilities, you know, where people have children, people are working, where do their children go? If we want to have a vital economic center, people being able to have a place to take their children that are nearby, that they can go visit them on their lunch break and pick them up easily is something to consider or to think about when we're talking about this. So.
Berkeley has a program called Habitats, and it's located, it's a storefront in a multi-story building in the downtown, and it is precisely for that reason. So it's another element of developing a complete solution. All right, maybe that is a good way to wrap it.
Great, yeah, good way to wrap up, Daniel. Well, it's the end of the year. I want to thank all of you for your time and effort that you've put in over the last year and a half, folks. We've been at a year and a half, right? And we got another year to go. So thank you for your time and efforts. I want to wish everybody happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I hope the holiday season is good for all your families. And again, it's a pleasure and an honor for me to be working with each and every one of you. Have a great holidays, guys.